Welcome to Inquiring Minds. I'm your host, Steve Harper, and with me, as always, is my amazing co-host, Donna Carlin. Donna, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited for today's conversation. So, what are we talking about?
Okay, Steve, you ready for this?
No.
Because I'm going to ask for a commitment. This is what it's all about. Can you commit to possibility, not roadblocks?
Ooh, ooh, this could be a really interesting one. You know, so what did you have in mind with this? I'm curious. I mean, this is a little bit of I think a heavy topic for some people because there's how do you deal with it, and where do you make the distinction?
It is a commitment to look for possibilities, even when you see roadblocks.
Yeah,
So many people are risk adverse.
yeah,
And hey, trust me, I do all these assessments that show people how they're hardwired, not learned behavior, but this is how they're hardwired.
yeah.
And they could be completely risk adverse. Even those people, I'm inviting to look for possibility and not roadblocks. The more risk adverse you are, or the more, once burned, twice shy kind of thing, the more you're going to literally internally commit to um, erecting those roadblocks to protect yourself.
Hmm. So
What
when you
if
do,
you let go of that
yeah.
and you committed to look for possibility and not look for the roadblocks?
So I'm curious on these assessments that you do with folks. Do most of these people consider themselves risk averse until you point it out to them, or what the assessment data comes back with, or is that kind of a surprise to
The surprise to them is where I hear, "Holy mackerel, that's exactly me."
them?
It's one of the few assessments that's literally your innate unchanging nature. So it doesn't change depending on age,
Yeah,
what you do, what you're surrounded with, none of it. It's literally how you're hardwired. So when I do the debrief and I tell them, this is what your traits are, your innate unchanging nature, and that literally tells you how much risk you're willing to play with. So it goes from pure risk, like I'll take as much risk as necessary. I'm just going to get it done. I'll fix the screw ups later. To I'm absolutely taking no risk. It's black or white. There's no gray zone. Dot all the I's, cross all the T's, or I'm not budging. and those people who are in that realm tend to really need data to confirm what it is that they're going to be doing, what they're going to
yeah,
act on. If it's supported, yes. If it's not supported, I'm waiting until it is, that
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah, yeah.
A black and white world. So they won't take risk, and so they're always looking for roadblocks. If we do this, this will happen, and it's usually not good stuff that will happen. If it's the opposite side of the coin, the risk takers, they'll say, we're going to do this, and hey, if something happens, we'll fix it. It's a different mentality. Then you have those in between, like moderate risk takers and low risk takers, depending on how they approach things. I'm inviting even the most risk adverse people to say, what if you did do it? What is the worst thing that could happen? Now, I'm
Yeah,
not talking about the world of cybersecurity or something that's a life or death situation. That's a different story.
sure.
I'm talking about living your life and having all these possibilities thrown at you, and you're not paying attention because you're so focused on what might, go wrong, or the other shoe that's going to drop. So I'm inviting people to look at possibility and not roadblocks.
So I'm really curious about this. So when you get an opportunity, are you working with a lot of individuals that are potentially struggling with this, or do you work with entire teams? Because you and I both been in environments where you have some super positive, creative, innovative people that are there, and then you across the table you always have the naysayers, right? That can only come up with all the five reasons why this thing would not take off or not work, right? And I do think that there's good balance, right, to have that on the team to a certain degree, but oftentimes roadblocks do not necessarily mean there's obviously inevitability if there is a real significant roadblock where an idea will not go forward or something won't work. But sometimes having that balance in the room can be important. do you find that most of the people that dive into this topic with you, that they're interested specifically about how do I overcome this, or how do I not allow someone to take the steam out of my ideas because they're so negative all the time about why it won't work?
So, to answer your first question, I work with both individuals and teams.
Okay.
And when I do this in a team context, it's incredibly powerful because they know they're hardwired and they work with it. Just to the second part of what you just said, um, recognizing roadblocks and not letting them stop you engages in possibility. So I'm inviting people who say, wait a minute, let's really look at this, or we can't do it. First of all, when I work with teams, the words can't, but we can, everything, then the but, which is
Yep.
the roadblock that stops them dead. Those words aren't allowed. And it's just so funny because I share them with them at the get go. These are words that are not acceptable in our conversations. And they just start laughing because it brings back about 42 other meetings that they had
Yeah.
where the same thing happened, right? No, 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 we can't do this because, that kind of thing. And my response is, what if you could? What would it look like? And I'm going to invite them to take whatever roadblocks they're seeing, which is critical, it's important to inform action rather than stop it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what they're doing is they're putting all the what if they did do it? Well, this might happen. Okay, how do you mitigate that? What could you do to go around it? And we have a generative conversation. It invites them not to act and react through fear and being risk adverse, instead using the knowledge and the wisdom that they have, even though they are low or no risk takers, to inform a decision that will pay attention to what might go wrong because
Yeah.
they've done that multiple scenario planning at the front end. So it's very powerful for them. It's powerful for what the results are, yes,
Yeah.
but it's powerful for them because they see the contribution they can make even from that stance.
Yeah.
That's where the magic happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Once they discover the possibilities and not being stuck, right, in the negativity of it won't work, I think is pretty huge. I was thinking back to a good friend of mine that I used to have lunch with pretty regularly, and I had several ideas outside of my general realm of what I do, and I remember having multiple conversations about this idea or that idea, and they were always the negative naysayer about why they would give you five reasons, right? Right off the top of their head, like they already had them queued up. They didn't even know the idea 3 minutes ago, and now they're already telling you why it won't work. And I remember two of these ideas actually ended up really taking off, and they were ones that other people came up with and did. But you look at that with a sense of regret as an entrepreneur, like if I had not listened to that, I would have been able to go forward and done it. But it did stop me dead in my tracks. And what I realized is that for me, I stopped putting ideas on the table for this person. The conversation always turned to, well, what are you working on? What are you doing? And what's going on? Or what are you thinking about next? And I really steered the conversation a different direction because I didn't need the negativity in terms of my excitement for something I might be working on or an idea that I was thinking about. I just recognized pretty early that that was working against me in terms of my enthusiasm. So I got bit twice. I don't think I want to be bit a third time. In fact, to the point that I don't even have lunch with this person that much anymore, just because
Wow.
it's the issue with them was everything had a roadblock, everything was a challenge that couldn't really be overcome, and they just wouldn't look outside of that in a lot of ways. And they were more than happy to tell you why they were so much the authority on something they didn't even know about. Right? So so sometimes you have to separate yourself from that. But it's interesting because I do think that I have a tendency to be very enthusiastic about ideas, and I look at all of the possible angles about why something will work. But then as maybe age and wisdom has really sort of contributed, I've gone back to, and I think I may have shared this with you recently on a conversation, that we have a kind of an idea we think that could really have some legs for my software company. It's a completely out of the box approach to some professional services. And the neat thing about it is that I put this idea on the table, My team really kind of got it and understood it. And I said, I want everybody to take the weekend, and I want you to come up with some reasons why it will work. And then I want you also, and we're going to open with this, tell me the reasons that it won't work. And everybody go off to your corners of the world and do your thing and then come back. And when we sat down and we had the meeting, it was really interesting. We got four different perspectives about why it wouldn't possibly work or could potentially not work. And we had far more positives about why they had already come up with their ability to overcome why it wouldn't work. All in the same, sort of, mental session that they had with themselves in preparation for the meeting. And it was a really useful tool because I think it gave people a broader sense of perspective because you get excited about something and it's easy to, want to follow the evangelist type leader that, oh yeah, that, let's go forge the path and make it work. But you don't look at the downside. I think it's also good to have your own balance to look at it, but then say, okay, what would happen? What's the worst thing that could happen if we try it and it doesn't work? What will we have learned, right? So the questions that you've posed on other episodes that we've had have really come into play and really handy for my team and how we're developing.
That's great. I'm thinking about that lunch mate that you have, not really mate, acquaintance, and how you are avoiding lunches with them. I think the reason why people are so negative, not to mention that they've practiced this for years. You could practice, positive things, you could practice negative things and be so
Yeah,
good at knocking things down that, that's what that person excels in, not so much the subject matter of the conversation. I wonder how that person would react if you said, I appreciate you asking, and I also am going to not answer you at this time because past history has told me the minute I share something with you, you're going to tell me every reason in the book why it's not going to happen. And I really don't want that right now. I have a whole team looking at this, and we will look at positives, negatives, and everything in between. If I share it with you, I don't want to lose the enthusiasm for it. So I'm going to respectfully decline
yeah.
and
Well,
see, what that person says, because often you're so busy fighting the negativity with
yeah,
trying to be, well, this is what we considered, this is what we considered, and to convince them. If you have to convince somebody, you're already at the bottom of the, the rung, so to speak, or whatever the expression is. You've already lost
yeah,
because you're trying to convince them that what you're thinking about is worthy in some way, shape, or form, or like a necessary addition to the world. And to stop it before it starts. And the minute they start, well, it's not going to work because thank you, end of conversation. I don't want to go there.
yeah,
And yeah, you're not
uh,
inviting them to knock you down.
yeah,
And they think that by you sharing, you're giving them an invitation to knock you down, and that's not acceptable
yeah.
unless you ask for what wrong, like, not wrong, what do you see that's wrong with this idea, and specifically ask for it. What do you see as pitfalls, because we want to consider them to move forward. This
Yep,
idea has merit, we're going to move forward. If you ask for that, then you get what you get. If you don't ask for it and you get it on a regular basis, it's all about them, it's not about you.
that's true. Yeah. Well, two things that come out of that, and part of the reason I think I have a little bit of conflict avoidance with this person is really, in all honesty, even if I were to phrase it like you suggested, do you think that actually puts conflict right in directly on the table at that point? Because what you're really doing in that sense is you're basically saying, "Hey, yeah, I am working on something, but I'm not telling you what it is because past history has, shown me that you're pretty negative about everything I do." And the natural tendency for that other person is to debate that at that juncture, right? And now they're even going to be more of a pest about what you're working on or making you're moving down the path of argument. Maybe it's maybe it's just me in terms of how I approach this particular individual, but I know that if I were to do that, then it would become an argument, right? About, are you kidding me? And look, you didn't do it, and I would have to come back and go, well, look, both these ideas I shared with you, somebody else did them, and they're making millions doing it, and um, it would only, we talk about communication on here all the time. I think it would really back us both into our mutual corners, and then tighten up the boxing gloves at that point. Because I would certainly have the ability to come back and say, well, look, if I hadn't listened to you, I would be in a position, and did I have to listen to that person? No, I did not.
No.
And that was my choice that I made in that moment. I should have asked better questions. I should have sought better guidance and advice. But to bring up anything like this idea that my team and I are working on, I could see this person shooting holes through it. And at the end of the day, there's just bad juju with that whole energy that they would bring to this anyway, because I know it would be negative. So I just avoid it. If I had to
There's
work
two
with that
sides.
person, it would be different. If it was,
Yeah.
a colleague or a friend, maybe not so much, right? So I've got the ability to kind of steer it and guide it the way I want it, which is at this point, I don't need the negative energy in my life. So, yeah, I'm not available for lunch for the foreseeable future.
For the next, yeah, foreseeable future. There's an addition to that.
Yeah,
It's what you're going to invite them to actually give you.
yeah,
It's to say, I don't want the idea shot down because there's a lot of energy behind it. If I share it with you, I'd like to hear how you see it might happen. How do you see it might be of benefit? That's what I want to hear from you. Not every reason, which we've already figured out why it might not work.
yeah,
And so you're asking for specifics. The second part of that, and this is one of my defaults, truthfully, is surround yourself with people who want to see you succeed and tell the
yeah,
others to take a hike.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And that's it. I mean, my whole life I've had people think that they had the right to give me advice that was absolutely not in my best interest
Right.
in every stage of my life and career. And my response was always, I'm hoping that you trust me enough to know that I will make the best decision for me
Yeah, yeah,
and that you will support it either way.
yeah. No, that's
And
good.
that
That's
puts them
good.
between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah. Well, this one, this episode, I think is going to kick off a lot of interesting comments because it'll be curious to see how our audience responds to this one because I think we could talk about this forever because there is a lot more to dive into. So this is definitely one we need to asterisk as a possible sequel episode. But we definitely like people to give us their opinion on this topic. Let us know what they're thinking and have they run into these issues in the past? Now, how have they handled them? And we'd love to, love to hear from you for sure. For those that are listening on the podcast platform, catching us on Facebook or YouTube, Donna, how do people get engaged in these kinds of episodes so that they can, the conversations continue?
Join our Facebook group, Inquiring Minds with Donna Carlin and Steve Harper, and share your 3 cents with us. Let us know what you're thinking, what you used, what you'd like us to talk about. Tell us about yourself and anything that might stimulate a conversation. We could have conversations there as well as the two of us here, and through our website. Steve could be found at ripplecentral.com. I'm at Donna Carlin with a K.com. And you could get all our social media links there, our email there, and join in the conversation. We would
Yep,
love to hear from you.
absolutely. And we won't throw up any roadblocks when you do.
No,
All right, Donna, this was another great episode. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll be back again with another episode of Inquiring Minds very soon.
have a good one.